Hi guys, and welcome back here to the Dev Realm. And today we're going to be carrying on our TCG series. And if you guys remember what we did in the last episodes, that we now displaying the counters, and we are now passing the information of the widget settings from the component. So we don't need to worry about having to set up the size of the card again. We just need to change in one place. What I would like to do here today is that I would like to, every time I add a card, this goes through my controller, gets validated, and returns back to the widget saying, yes, please add the card. So to do this, we're going to do a couple of things in here that I will have to change. So the first one of the things that I will need to change here is the ability for the user to build a deck. Right now, that feature, it's a little bit far. We're not going to get to that right now, but we're going to add the logic in so you can add cards to this, right? So the first thing that I would like to do here is that I'm going to open up here the player info. Okay. And in here, I am going to add a couple of new things here. So the first one is the cards. What is the cards that the player have? So cards, right? And here is going to be ST card because it means is the card that we added, and this is going to be an array. All right. And now, of course, that we can duplicate it, this, and we can search for deck, right? Deck. Card deck. And then we can search for data table row handle. And this is going to be, I'm going to change that to have a default value, right? So if I compile, I can save that structure. Right, we can do here is that we can add the card, and I would like to change what cards can I have, right? Do I have an arcane? Do I have a barrier? Do I have blah blah blah? So in this case, we're always going to start with a fireball, right? Nice. Now we're not going to use deck yet, but we're going to be changing a couple of things in here. So now let's see if this still works. Yeah, still working. Now what I would like to do is that every time I press add a new card, I want to validate on the, actually a better idea. Yeah, let's just start with every time I press add a new card, it goes on my player controller, validates the card, finds the card, adds the card, and then it comes back right here, right? Let's do that. So to do that, we are going to go back here to our component here to the player, and on the TCG settings, I'm going to open up here TCG settings. How much is the max cards I can have? So it's going to call max cards. All right. And now here, I'm going to actually create an integer value. And I'm going to give a default value of 30. I think Hearthstone is 30 cards you can have. I'm not sure. I mean, you can always get more, but the default is 30. All right. Now, what happened? That when you go back to the event graph, we have start the widget for the player, right? Start the widget for the player here. And what we would like to do here for now is that I'm going to create a dummy deck so I can add cards for my player, right? So this is on the client, which is perfect. Now I'm going to get this player information, right? I'm going to break this, and I am going to basically well, ideally, you would loop the card deck to do this, but I don't have a way of adding cards to the deck yet. So I'm just gonna go back here to the event graph where we do this, right? So I'm just gonna copy that for now. I'm gonna go back to my TCG components. I'm gonna edit this right here. That just this part, right? And I will need to basically compile this stuff here. And how can I do this the best? So we are gonna, I'm just trying to think here how we're gonna add this information, right? So because I'm trying to make it as real as possible. So we do unfortunately gonna have to do a deck builder here, right? So we're gonna get the player settings. Okay. Now with the player settings, we're gonna break it and we're gonna get the max cards and we're gonna do a for loop. All right. We're gonna do a for loop. Now here, here, right? So we're gonna do a for loop. The first index is gonna be 1. The last index is gonna be 30, which is the one we defined at that. Now the next thing we're gonna plug it is here. So every time it loops, I want to get a random card. In this case, I want to get a random information from the data table. And I want to break this. And I want to go back to the deck. And I want to add a value. And this value here, actually, we need to add. We need to make this value, right? And here, we need to select the cards. And what's the row? The one we got it from here, okay? Now, this it's purely for development purposes. In a real scenario, the player would have his deck beforehand, before loading this page, but we don't have the information, unfortunately. So we just need to, yeah, so this is only for development, for dev, right? Now what happened is that we can do a print. I'm going to get the player information and I'm just going to do a length. I want to get a length and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to add this and press play. 31. So it's adding 31 cards, which it's bad because I think on the player settings, I already added a deck. Yes, I don't want to add that card. I just want to, you know, now I have 30. Okay. That's perfect. That's pretty perfect. Now we got the cards and everything is perfect. Now, let's focus on the TCG, the game rules. So we're going to create a new graph called game rules. All right. So the game rules is going to be where all the rules is going to be like things, calculation, health, and whatever. And we're going to create a game actions. Because don't you agree with me that adding a card, it is a game action, all right? So what we're going to do is that everything always starts on the player controller and then it gets replicated over the chain. So we're going to create here an a custom event called API add new card client. So everything starts on the client, okay? And then as you guys can probably see, custom event, server, and then the last one, custom event called multicast. All right. Now we call multicast on the server and we call the server on the client, because remember the client is always the one that's adding a new card. I mean, it could be the server, but the action and the intention should always come from the client, you know, unless we leave to the game instance to do it, but that's another scenario. Let's figure out first this, right? So now what happened is that we need to get the player information and we need to break this stuff and we need to get what's the next deck. So we're going to get a random array item, right? Now we got a random array item. So what happened here is that now we need to basically be able to read that information. One thing I noticed is that this, runs on the client, reliable, runs on the server, reliable, and this runs on a multicast and is reliable, right? Okay, nice. So now what happened is that we have here the information of the card. So we can break it and we get the name, right? Now I can do, here's a get row, data table row. And this can be the card. So what is the card you're trying to get, right? So I'm going to try to get this card here. Now what happened is we can basically do a couple of things. So the first one is that this is the card information that we have, all right? So what happens is that we're going to get the player information, paste it, and we're going to add a value. We're going to add the card here, right? Now what happened is that we have the card added to the player information itself. Like we added the card here and everything looks quite great. You know, we added the card. The problem that we have here is that we need to also add to the widget. Luckily for us, we already have that method to figure out called add, API add new player card, right? And the card will be added right here because we already have that information that we added that. So the things, guys, that we need to be aware here is that this adds on the player info and this adds on the player widget. There are two different things working together, okay? They are not the same instance, but there are two main different things working together. But that will be fine for now. So now what happened is that I don't want to see this card again. So after all this stuff happened, I want to get the card deck. I want to remove the index. The index I want to remove is the random one. And I just want to plug it right here. That's all. So we got to do here. Now, there is one more issue with this. The problem is that we are running both things on client and server. And you guys remember that the server doesn't have access to the client, all right? So you need to basically call it's valid. And if it's valid, then you carry on with that. And if it's not valid, you go back to this one, all right? Now, I would probably organize this better, but let's see what's going to happen. So here is the when the player or the system add a new card, right? Now what happened here, guys, is that we're going to compile and save. We are going to go back here to the card, the client, right? And on the main TCG here, I do not need this information anymore. All I got to do here, get the component, added this, and let's see if this is going to work. So we do need to remove this, by the way, but let's see what's going to happen here. Look at that. It's adding a new card, which is really good. Now, what happens if I play as a server? So he adds. Okay. What happens if I play as a client? Would that work? Let's see. It does work. You see, and it's adding random cards all the time, which is good. Like you see, it's controlled, which is really good. We're adding random cards. So you basically don't need this information anymore. Okay. Do not need this info anymore. We do need that. So I can actually delete this. I don't need pre-construct. I need this. I do need this. But I do not need that crazy information again. Now, look how cool is this, okay? I'm gonna give you like what can you, like we still have to create this manager that will manage the game. But if I do a delay of, let's say, 2 seconds, and I call this, and then I do a 2 seconds, and then I call that, and then 2 seconds, and then I call that, right? If I press play, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Look at that. So it's adding cards dynamically. So this is adding both on the client, is adding both on the server. Now, I'm just going to make this a little bit faster because what I want to show you here is how nice this is. Like we can copy our player information here, right? We can paste it right there. And what we can do here, sorry, is that we can get the length. how many cards do you have right now? So if I print this, I should be able to see, I don't know, like 5 cards, 10 cards. I don't know, like 3 cards we have. 2, 3. Look at that. So we have 2 clients, 2 cards. That's fine because 0 is counted as 1. So 0 counts as an object. So don't worry about that. But we have the card right here. Now, of course, we have a problem that once we remove the card, nothing is happening. So this is only for development purposes. So I'm just going to leave it right there. So once you start the game, once you start the game, when you drop the card, when you do this function, when you drop the card, it needs to be removed, right? Now, of course, we are calling this function here that we call fn remove, and we call the card that we are dropping. That's totally fine. But also, we need to remove from the API on the server, right? So what we can do here is that the component here, the TCG game component, we need to go back to the game actions, and we need to create here a custom event called API remove card, right, from deck. And this one, maybe you can add, I'm just gonna call API remove card, all right? Now this again runs on the client. This is the client that calls. This runs on the server. And this one here will run on a multicast, which basically runs on both. Multicast. All right. Oh, I mistyped. Multicast. Now, this calls by the server, and the server calls here. All right. Now, of course, we have a challenge that we need to find exactly what card it is, what is the index of that card, whatever. So we may need to update a couple of things, but let's try to do this in a different way. So remove the card. We're going to basically call this runs on the server. No, runs on the client. This one runs on the server. And the last one runs on the multicast, right? Now let's go back to the cards and see what happened. What information do we have available? So we know that we have the card itself, and I can break it and get card. Do I have the card info? Yes, perfect. I have the card information. Now we could make it so, no, actually let's get this. Let's break it down. And here I have the card information. So I have the name, right? Remember, cards, we do have repeated cards. We do not care about the ID of the card at this point. We just want to remove any object that has that name against our system, right? So now what we need to do here is that we need to go here and we need to get the player information. We need to break this thing. Break it. We need to do a for each loop, for each with a break. The reason that we're doing with a break, it's because we want to get the first card with the name. If matches with whatever we are trying to pass right here, right? It means that we want to remove, right? So this is going to be card name. This here's going to also be card name, and here's going to be also called card name, right? Now, if that's equal, for now, we are going to do a print on this, and also we're going to print the index that it's going to come up from that. Now we come back here, we go back to the main widget, we get our component, get a component, and we get the API remove card, and in here, of course, we pass the card name. Like, we could actually store the index, but honestly, I think it's better to do this way. I would rather prefer to do like that because I feel more safe adding this. Okay. I keep adding defense, though. I don't know why it keeps adding the defense card. Anyway, now if I do the iron wall, 1 here, hit true. You see? True. So false, but the last one is always true. So now what happened? I need to go back here. This is not actually removing from the server. It's just only removing from the widget, okay? Now, what we do here is that we call this information. We do that information right here. Add all that stuff. Now, if this equals true, all we gotta do here is that we get a card and we're gonna remove the index. Remove the index, all right? Send the index. No, you want, sorry, remove index. And then we add it right here. And in this case, it goes back to the break. And that's pretty much what we got to do here. Now, what happened is that, so this remove the card from the player deck. Normally, when the player uses the card. Of course, then now we have to create the rules, like can you use the card, can you throw the card, and things like that. But right now, look at this. We have the cards. Now, if I get out of that, drop it, it's out, out, and then out. So it keeps removing the card. Now, what I can do here as well, guys, is that we could do it. So I'm just thinking about this because we do have the game rules, sorry, the UI stuff where we reload the widget, which means that we're calling this and we are reloading the widget right here. Nice. Now, what I would like to reload here as well is the ability to, the cards counter. So basically what we do is that we get a cards counter, set text, or get text. Now I think I did a mistake on this component. How do we call this card name? So it's cards counter, all right? Let's compile and save that information right here. So now we have the cards counter. I'm gonna go back to, let me just save all this stuff because it's quite messy. Here, go back that. We're gonna get the cards counter. And here we just need to set the text. So set text. Now we're gonna put the value right here. Literal string, that's what we need. We're gonna add a append twice. And here's gonna be dash. I'm gonna put this value here. Now, all you need to do is that we need to get here a couple of things. So the first one, we need to get the settings. And then we get the player, get player info. Get player info. All right, so the first one that we gotta do here is that we need to get how much the max cards we can have. And now we're gonna break the player information. Here we're gonna get only the player cards. We're gonna get the length, and we're gonna add the length right here. All right. So we're gonna compile and save. Let's see if that's gonna work. We should be, I think 3, if I'm not mistaken. 2, 3. Now the problem that we have is that we need to find a way to dynamically upload the counter, because right now, when we add a new card on here, we're only calling that on when the game starts. So ideally, we would need to call that here. Say remove the index. So when you, and also once here is completed, we call that. So it reloads the client. All right. Let's see. So if I added a new card, look at that. 1, 2, 3. Voila, look at that. That's really cool, right? 4. So if I keep adding, it keeps bumping, and now shouldn't be able to add more cards. And also if I remove the cards, like, okay, look at that. I can't add the card anymore. Like, it doesn't work. It keeps, and it's real time, which is really cool. I really like this. And to be honest, guys, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover for this part. Like, I think what we're going to be starting to do on the next one, it's a little bit about the rules. Look here, for example, now we have a problem, right? Access none, set the position. This is probably because move card to the position. Ah, I see. So what happened? There's a problem here. When we load this, we need to make sure that we, let's see, has authority. So it has authority. Let me just have a look. What does this do again? Has authority. Okay. So, I mean, what it can do better. What we can try to do, like we call this anyway. But here, I just forgot to do a very simple thing here. The widget, we need to make sure is valid, all right? Make sure that you only run this if the widget is valid, which means that because both client and the server, they run on the same, let's say, instance, we want to keep sure that only one is valid. So we're going to add new cards and keep adding new cards like crazy, all right? And remove, so I can, look at that. I really like this effect. No more issues, great. That's everything we wanted to actually add here. Now, the next one, as I said, we're going to start to scope out our rules. So every time you throw a card, and then you press end of turn or something, we need to come up with an idea to do that properly. But I think, guys, I'm having a very, good sense of this. Before I just had an idea here, like before we started to add the rules, let's just add the things to remove health, add health, remove mana, add, like things like I added this card, or I added this card, and that card, and this card, and that card, and then what happened, and what it does, what is the rules. So that's what I would like to add here for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you in the next one.